again, everybody. It is time once again for the Silver Bullets podcast. I'm Michael Citro.
And I'm Chip Minnich.
Chip, we are in the college football season.
We made it.
We did it.
We crossed the barren desert. We made it. Finally.
Our long national nightmare is over.
There you go.
Did you watch some football this weekend?
Oh, absolutely. I know we're going to talk about it in greater detail when we talk about the Big Ten, but I did watch the triumphant return of Bert. I did watch Nebraska at Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
So it certainly did not turn out the way that I anticipated, but it was still great to see football nonetheless.
Yeah. Well, we can start off by talking about it because why not? It was the only Big Ten game on the schedule in Week 0, and it was the Nebraska Cornhuskers going to Illinois. And like I said in our Western Conference or Western Division Big Ten prediction show, we're going to find out a lot about Nebraska early in the season. I started to drink the Kool-Aid there on Scott Frost, and I choked on that Kool-Aid, Chip.
Well, I hope that somebody was nearby to help you, like smack you on the back as that Kool-Aid, you were choking on it. But
the Kool-Aid went down the wrong pipe, let me tell you.
I know, I'm sure. It was, every possible thing that could go wrong for Nebraska did. To me, just the inexplicable, punt return from within the 10 that resulted in a safety. Adrian Martinez fumbling right before the half, which is a scoop and score. Just a lot of things. Like even at the end when Nebraska did score, just clock management. Completely. There were just so many errors throughout, and I know I jokingly said the triumphant return of Bert, but the compliments to Bret Bielema, because his team came out. There were pretty no frills. The fact that they lost Brandon Peters early in that game, Artur Sitkowski came in and was very, very solid, very efficient. So if you're an Illinois fan, I think you have to be excited about the fact that not to get too ahead of yourself. It was Nebraska after all. But the simple fact that Bielema came in and has already kind of given that program a much needed jolt of energy and enthusiasm as the season begins.
Yeah, that was an aggressive Illinois defense, and it was a man ball type of offense, especially when Brandon Peters got hurt. I've always liked Art Sitkowski. I figure anybody that can come in and start as a freshman, doesn't matter what school you're at, if you can start as a freshman, you're an impressive kid. And he never really got his chance to come back and be that star at Rutgers, and they changed their offense a bit, and so he transferred into Illinois because the state of Illinois is where all quarterbacks transfer to.
I guess so. You're right. Like Art Sitkowski, a lot of people forget because the way that everything turned out at Rutgers, that from what I recall, Art Sitkowski was actually, I don't want to say heavily recruited, but he had other scholarship offers from some decent programs, and the fact that he had chosen Rutgers, it was kind of a feather in the cap, so to speak, for Rutgers at the time, that he actually turned down winning programs to go to Rutgers and try and turn it around. But I think the fact that he came in, was able to guide Illinois efficiently, like you said, they were playing pretty much no frills offensively, which is not a big surprise for anyone who's followed Bret Bielema's career, at Wisconsin and at Arkansas, running the ball. I thought that, they did exactly what they needed to do in terms of controlling the clock. They capitalized on a lot of those mistakes. So, it could be a very long season for Scott Frost in Nebraska if they don't turn around things very, very quickly as of this coming week when they play Fordham.
It could be the very last season for Scott Frost at Nebraska. You're right. They play Fordham and then Buffalo, so they have a chance to get well in the non-conference schedule. But then at Oklahoma, at Michigan State, possibly a winnable game. You know, I know you're not very high on Michigan State this year. Northwestern at home, Michigan at home, at Minnesota, Purdue at home, Ohio State at home, at Wisconsin and Iowa. I don't know that this team gets bowl eligible with that Illinois loss.
You might be right, because they definitely needed, when you start, as you just rattled off the schedule, it's like coming up with that magic 6 number. You know, that Illinois game was certainly one of those where it's like, okay, they needed that. You know, like they needed that to be in the win column. Obviously, you know, like as you said, like Fordham, Buffalo, Michigan State. I'm going to be so bold as to say it's not beyond the realm of possibility that they can beat Michigan. But a lot of those other Big Ten West opponents that they play, and especially when the calendar turns to November, it's not going to be pretty, because when you have to finish up playing against Ohio State, and I'm gonna probably get the sequence wrong, Ohio State, Wisconsin, and Iowa.
That's correct.
Okay, so right there, they need to have 6 wins before, you know, the calendar turns from October to November.
Yeah,
it's not happening in November.
I agree. It's the Ohio State at Wisconsin, and then you know they do have Iowa at home, and that is a huge rivalry to say, you know, for bragging rights on which state has the best corn. But
well,
you know,
yeah,
we'll see how it goes. I don't see a win in there either.
right. I mean, it certainly hasn't been to Nebraska's advantage. You know, like I know that when they joined the Big Ten, that it's been one of these things where I think like trying to get excited about the idea of a rivalry with Iowa, you know, and having it on Black Friday. And don't get me wrong, I mean, you know, I enjoy the fact that it's kind of like that's the tradition. That's when you're going to watch that game. But it certainly hasn't been good for Nebraska. So, yeah, if they can get to 6, then Scott Frost probably sticks around. But you know, I think Trev Alberts is going to be hearing from a lot of angry boosters and a lot of angry fans about what they all collectively saw at Illinois this past Saturday.
Yeah, no, we mentioned you said the word efficient or efficiency when talking about Sikowski, and that's exactly right. I mean, because the team was not throwing the ball very often, but when they did, Art Sikowski did very well. They played like you said, a pretty vanilla game, especially after Brandon Peters got hurt. And it was unfortunate. You never want to see a kid get hurt, especially game 1. But you know, he managed the game well. He threw one bad pass in the game, and it ended up not counting because they roughed the passer on that play and also taunted. So, you know, Nebraska sitting on a 7-point lead and getting the ball going in, you know, to scoring territory. And instead, you get 2 flags, 30 yards of penalties, and now you've got Illinois almost in the red zone on those penalties. They end up scoring the touchdown, and what a huge swing that was. And then, of course, you get Nebraska gets a chance to get the last possession of the half and do something with it. And as you mentioned, Martinez with the fumble, scoop and score, and now you're behind, and all that momentum's going the Illini way. And then that continued it. And I think the biggest indictment of the Nebraska team is when they knew Illinois would be running the ball, especially to run clock in the fourth quarter. They were giving up 6, 7, 8 yard chunks on first down. And when you know what the other team's going to do and you can't stop it, that's not a good sign for a successful season.
Especially when you think about, let's be candid here. Everyone knew that Bielema, his philosophy, I mean, following his career, has always been, as you said, you know, like that you know, just very aggressive, you know, like man ball type, you know, running the ball approach. And there's nothing wrong with that. We just rattled off some of the Big Ten West opponents that Nebraska has to play as well as Ohio State, who they are all very proficient at running the ball.
Yep.
Wisconsin, Iowa. So if you're having trouble with Illinois, and again, I don't want to take anything away from, give credit where credit is due, because as you said, it's like Nebraska knew it was coming. They couldn't stop it. Guess what? Like those Big Ten West powerhouses like Wisconsin and Iowa and Ohio State, even though they're the Big Ten East, they're going to do the exact same thing. So I don't know how you rectify that between now and the remainder of the season, because it's pretty much been laid bare that your run defense was able to be worn down.
Yeah. And you mentioned the safety early in the game was a ridiculous play by Britt Taylor, a player who should have been around long enough to know better. He had that chance to redeem himself with the interception, and then that was taken away from him. I got to say, I don't want to beat, I don't want to harp too much on the Nebraska-Illinois game, but it was the only game. But I have never liked what they've done with some of the roughing calls, because that was, I thought, a case of where a kid running full speed hits a stationary target. The guy's going to come off the ground. He can't have known the ball was out at the time he hit him. I don't think he really like pivoted the quarterback and pile drove him into the ground so much as he just tackled him hard and landed on him. I don't know about that call, and it was a major call in the game. So, I don't know how you stand on it. I certainly do want to protect the quarterbacks and not get quarterbacks hurt, but that was one of those plays that I'm not sure how you legislate that out of the game, short of guys trying to come in sideways and kind of spin guys around, and then they're going to keep their balance, and then they're going to escape the pocket and hit a 60-yard touchdown pass.
No, I agree with you. It was a judgment call, and it certainly, in terms of the momentum, you already talked about it. It was a 30-yard swing, and that's where the game, for all intents and purposes, was decided, because pretty much from that point on, Illinois was decisively in control. And again, questionable. Like, how was it truly roughing the passer? But like I think certainly most people, when they remembered watching the game, I know that the analysts on Big Ten Network, when they were talking about it, they said that was definitely the key play of the game, in terms of the trajectory of the game. And I know that you want to move on from talking about it, but here's something to ponder. And again, I'm not trying to sound like I'm throwing dirt on Scott Frost's grave, but people have kind of openly speculated, because Scott Frost was supposed to be the guy who came back, and he was this link to the Tom Osborne glory days. Well, where do you go? What direction do you take if Scott Frost isn't the answer? He's got between now and the end of November to show that, yeah, he is making positive progress, but it's going to be something to bear, keep an eye on.
It's eerily similar to the Jim Harbaugh situation in Michigan.
Oh, easily.
But yeah, on top of the roughing the passer penalty, if you don't taunt them and help them get 15 yards closer, maybe you're able to get a stop there. The other thing Nebraska did that they're going to need to work on is they had a pretty good kicker last year, and this year he's already missed 2 extra points.
That was, again, just there were so many things that just went wrong that I think that's why Scott Frost just looked kind of just shell-shocked, for lack of a better word, after the game.
Yeah, and also one other thing that you mentioned before we move on is that you touched on it earlier. The clock management in the fourth quarter, when they were behind and they were not really moving with much urgency, they were still calling a lot of running plays and only getting 1 or 2 yards out of them. And I don't know what they were doing, but that was not good 4-minute offense. You got to be running your 4-minute offense there, down multiple scores.
And I know you and I have been college football fans for a long time, and I never would have ever guessed that you would say Nebraska has a bad running game. I mean, they
Mm-hmm.
were just now. I know Adrian Martinez had a long touchdown run that put him over 100 yards rushing, but by and large, the rest of the running game was just anemic. So
Yeah.
there's so many things that need to be fixed.
Yeah, he got 75 yards on one play. Other than that, he was fairly bottled up. I mean, even when he would scramble out of the pocket, it was generally no more than 6 to 8 yards. You know, it wasn't a lot of other big chunk plays from him in the run game. So they weren't able to run off the tackle. I know what they were trying to do there in that segment of the game. They were trying to catch Illinois' defensive end getting up the field to come in a pass rush and then run underneath that. But the problem for Nebraska was, and they never adjusted to it, he wasn't taking a wide rush. He was just coming right off the tackle's shoulder. So it didn't work out, and I feel bad about picking them being Nebraska fifth in the West, because now I'm thinking more like your position, which was sixth or possibly even seventh.
Yeah. Oh well. Again, I had them. Like I thought that they would be better. They still have a chance for redemption. Again, now let's face it. Like what kind of I guess opposition Fordham is going to put up on Nebraska. I genuinely don't know, but I'm just saying it's like that might be be a bad thing in the sense of like giving them false confidence. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, we're actually pretty good. It's like, well, are you? I don't know. So it's like I said, it's going to be an interesting season to say the least.
Yeah. Well, if you're Scott Frost and you win and you beat Fordham in Buffalo badly, then you're like, yeah, we're back on track now, and we're doing a lot of things. It's not perfect yet, but we're on the right track, and then you could talk up a big game, and I don't necessarily think that that's going to be the case. And if he loses one of those games, well, he may as well just start packing up the house, because that's not gonna bode well. And I misspoke earlier. I had him at fourth, and you had him at fifth. I might put him as low as sixth. I don't know if that I'd go all the way to seventh, but I don't know if it would be a terrible prediction to put him seventh after what I saw on Saturday. But we'll see how they respond. It's just one game. You can never really overreact to one game. We'll see how it goes the rest of the way. Certainly, they had a lot of things go against them in that game. And they were not able to overcome those. So, you and I talked before the podcast that one of those things was that Martinez can't throw to his left. He had opportunities to throw early touchdown passes on consecutive plays and missed a guy wide open both times. And they pointed that out through the broadcast. He was not throwing well to his left when he had guys open, and he wasn't able to make plays on third downs and in the red zone, and that was the knock on him last year.
Like I said, it might be a long year in Lincoln.
Yep. All right, let's move on. Chip, that was it was good. I did not watch all of the UCLA Hawaii game because my Rainbow Warriors were getting absolutely pummeled and couldn't stop anything, and so I gave up. We talked about Chip Kelly too, and I think Chip Kelly will take his opening day game.
Yeah, I didn't actually catch this game. I was actually out and about, but I kept looking on the scores and seeing that UCLA had virtually no problem whatsoever with Hawaii. Now, we were just talking about the problem of false confidence. That okay, are you really as good as you think you are? Because this coming week UCLA plays LSU, and I'm not saying that it's beyond the realm of possibility that UCLA can pull off the upset, but I genuinely believe that LSU is going to be a much more demanding and difficult test than what they experienced in Game 1 against Hawaii.
Oh, I would expect so. I don't know if LSU will be back. Are they back this year, Chip? I don't know. But yeah, it was 31-3 at the point where I said, okay, well, I've seen enough routine running plays where guys just are refusing to tackle that I know how this is going to go the rest of the way, and that final was 44-10. I did not watch the UTEP game as I mentioned I might. So
Oh,
I
false
I have no
advertising.
yeah I have no report on that. I was weirdly tired and had a lot to do, so I
That's
didn't end up
okay.
doing that. Anyway, let's talk about the Buckeyes, Chip, and let's
Sure.
specifically before we actually have a guest to talk about the upcoming game Thursday night against the Minnesota Golden Gophers. But before we get to that, I wanted to just touch on some of the things that have gone on in the program and with players that used to be in the program. And we'll start with here we are recording this on Monday night, and we still don't have an answer from the NCAA on Gao Teote on his eligibility, which pretty much everyone says he should be eligible, and we're 3 days away from the first game, and the NCAA is mum's the word.
Yeah, it's tremendously unfortunate because it certainly seems like the young man did everything right except the timing of when he put in his name into the transfer portal. So it certainly seems like the NCAA is being very, very arbitrary as usual with their decision making, and you certainly hope that if not by Thursday, certainly by game 2, that he'll be eligible to play for Ohio State.
Well, there's really no reason. It's not like they have no knowledge that this has been filed. They know when the deadline is. They know when the first game is. Make the decision. It's not that. This should be a rubber stamp situation. So any foot dragging appears on the NCAA's part to be intentional.
I agree. Like I said, I think it's just being, some arbitrary decision that they are, they feel empowered. And again, I can only imagine the frustration, within the program, because again, this kid did everything he was supposed to do. Why the NCAA is taking so long, I couldn't begin to give you a plausible answer.
Yeah. And like you and I have spoken about before, when the NCAA drags their feet this long, they're usually not going to give you the answer that you want at the end anyway. That's why they're putting it off. So we hope for the best, but expect the worst. I think that's the wise approach with anything having to do with the NCAA is expect the worst and hope for the best. Let's turn our attention toward the Block O jersey, Chip. The Block O jersey was awarded to Thayer Munford, a player who cannot actually wear that number because he's an offensive lineman, which begs the question, two questions really. One, what does it matter what number an offensive lineman wears in the NCAA in college football? And two, should there be a secondary Block O where Thayer could wear like a little patch and then someone else can actually wear that number who actually can wear it legally?
Well, as far as I'll answer the second part of your question first. Thayer Munford is going to be wearing a patch because he is ineligible when Ryan Day announced that he was the recipient. I'm not sure, if because I honestly, I guess I went into this whole Block O jersey with the mindset that Bill Willis was a defensive lineman. So I guess I genuinely thought, okay, that was kind of, like the motivation for it. I'm very happy for Thayer Munford that he is, that he is the recipient, and Ryan Day, the clip that I saw on Twitter, the video clip, when they were kind of shaking hands and embracing, that Ryan Day said, you deserve this. So I certainly am not going to question the wisdom of the selection. Getting back to your first question, yeah, I think that they should, it really should not. I mean, what does it matter? I mean, again, I'm showing my age here, and he wasn't a lineman, but I remember Bernie Kosar wearing number 20 when he played for the Miami Hurricanes. I know Doug Flutie wore number 22 for Boston College. So what would it matter if Thayer Munford was wearing a number 0 for Ohio State? So I think, it makes all sense in the world to me, like that he could wear that for this season.
Yeah. Plus, you could do cool things if you could do whatever with your numbers. Like you could say have G. Scott and DeJuan Jones on the field, and then what's this? G. Scott's lining up as a tackle, and DeJuan Jones is splitting out wide at the goal line. This is fun. Let's see what happens. But no, you can't do that because you got to be wearing certain numbers. It's we have the NFL for that. Let's have fun in college football. We can have the proper stuffy football on Sundays.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said, like in the NFL, for what it's worth, they changed their rule this year that players are allowed, if you want to wear, like single digits or, any of that you can do that. So, yeah, I think you're right. I don't understand the logic of why Thayer Munford would be ineligible to wear the Black O jersey. I know he's going to wear a patch. Congratulations to him for being selected. It's just unfortunate he doesn't get to wear the jersey as he's been awarded it.
Yeah, I am for anything that makes college football more fun, and I am against anything that makes college football less fun. I guess that's my take.
It's not a bad take.
All right, I appreciate that. All right, let's talk about some Buckeyes that are not Buckeyes anymore. I saw a great catch from Devin Smith this weekend. Urban Meyer has signed him with the Jags, and he went out and made an unbelievable catch this weekend.
And as we're recording this, and I'm not saying that Devin Smith isn't going to make Jacksonville's roster, but like you said, he was just recently signed. He did have that very nice catch. As we're recording this, roster cuts are being made throughout the NFL. Different transactions are taking place. So even by the time we're done recording, there may be, players on the move, just because NFL teams are starting to make those designations, like they have until Tuesday afternoon, I think by like 4:00 to get their rosters down to 53. And then
right.
The unfortunate thing about that is there have been so many times throughout, it doesn't matter which NFL team that you follow, where a player thinks, oh, I made it. And then after that first wave of, or I should say that final wave of cuts has come through, that, oh, I see that so-and-so was just cut by the fill in the blank. And I think they are a better player than who we have on the roster. So, it can, I'm sure it's just a very unsettling time for any NFL player, just because, it's just the nature of the business.
Sure. So yeah, he might be cut by the time this thing drops. So who knows? But it doesn't hurt his stock that he caught that pass. I always thought Devin Smith would be a good NFL receiver, and I still think if he was in the right situation, he could be. So didn't help him to go to the Jets first, I guess, is what I'm saying. Chip, the other player I saw recently score a touchdown was Noah Brown. No, I'm sorry, Benjamin Victor. Same team Noah Brown played for. Dallas Cowboys. Benjamin Victor scored a touchdown, so that was cool.
Is Benjamin Victor on the Cowboys or is he on the Ravens? I thought that was for the Ravens. I saw the clip that you're talking about. That's why I thought that it was for the.
Oh, was he playing against the Cowboys? Maybe I'm just getting. Yeah, I'm tired. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
But yeah, Benjamin Victor scored a touchdown, which was good. It was also not good that I saw Shaun Wade give up a touchdown late in the game last night.
Well, that would be true. I will also make the point that New England made a deal with Baltimore to get Shaun Wade, and for them to give up a draft choice to Baltimore, who believe that their secondary obviously is well stocked. Because Shaun Wade, from what I understand, in training camp was having a very solid preseason. Just going again, like, not that I've had an opportunity to see Baltimore play in the preseason, but I know on Twitter, Shaun Wade, I think, was doing well. And I believe, New England looked at their roster, thought, all right, we're kind of needing some secondary help. For them to give up a draft choice and then possibly not keep Shaun Wade would be a surprise to me.
Yeah, I think they'll keep him. I just, and he'd only been there for, what, a day, 2 days? I mean, he certainly wasn't there very long. But I just was making mention that he was on the field. I think he got pushed a little bit, but, in the NFL, you're gonna get a little physical. Some bad news for J.K. Dobbins, torn ACL, Chip. This is a real blow to a guy who was poised to have a big year.
It is, especially, considering he was, I know that it's a sore spot for you, and it's okay that, like, you were hoping that when he was, with your love of the Miami Dolphins, that you were hoping that he was going to slide to the Dolphins, and it didn't happen. And then Baltimore snagged him. And, but getting back to the unfortunate news about J.K. Dobbins, I'm sure he is going to attack his rehab vigorously and come back strong. But yeah, I mean, that's a major setback for not only for J.K. Dobbins, but for Baltimore, because I'm sure that they were counting on him to be a major focal point of the offense.
Yeah, I mean, he had a very solid first year, and like I said, he was poised to have a big year, and I think he was certainly in their plans to be a major weapon, and now he will be out. I know that while a lot of Browns fans will be unhappy that J.K. got hurt, I don't think they're going to be weeping for the Baltimore Ravens, however.
No, there is no love lost. I can tell you that it's been more than 25 years, and the sting of the then Cleveland Browns being moved to Baltimore to become the Baltimore Ravens. Yeah, that's still a very tender and touchy subject around the Cleveland area.
Yeah, that is a stain that never washes away. Never washes away. All right, and one final bit of news we're hearing today is that Billy Price is on his way from Cincinnati to the Giants. So unfortunate to leave Ohio and playing in the Big Apple, though, or actually in the Big New Jersey.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to take this, to be honest, because, obviously, I had really high hopes for Billy Price. I'm sure, as most Ohio State fans did, when he was selected by Cincinnati. And for whatever reason, and you mentioned about Devin Smith, the unfortunate part about being selected by the New York Jets. It seemed kind of like he fell out of favor with the Cincinnati Bengals organization for whatever reason. So maybe obviously the fact that he is an Ohio guy, for him to have to leave Cincinnati to go to the Giants, and the Giants are struggling and trying to get back to their winning ways. This might be the best thing for Billy Price's career in the long run.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. That probably, I haven't seen any of the cuts yet, but it probably means good things for Michael Jordan to make the Bengals roster.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. I would think that means good things for Michael Jordan. Like you said, we're still kind of finding out how the NFL transactions are coming and going, because it's not until Tuesday afternoon that they have to have everyone have their rosters down to 53.
Yeah. All right, Chip. Well, we've pushed Ohio State talk off long enough. It's a game week. We should talk about the Buckeyes, and we will. First, we're going to talk about the Buckeyes' opponents. We're going to do that with a special guest who knows the Gophers, he covers the Gophers, and can tell us all the answers to the questions that we ever wanted to know about the Minnesota Golden Gophers. Let's get to that interview right after this. All right, joining us this week on the Silver Bullets podcast, we're very happy to have with us a special guest to help us preview Ohio State at Minnesota. It's Randy Johnson, the Gophers and college football beat writer for the Minneapolis Star-Tribune. Randy, thanks for your time tonight.
Oh, appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me on.
So I wanted to start out with some basics. The Gophers, what are the expected strengths and weaknesses of this Gophers team entering the 2021 season?
Well, they should be pretty good in running the football. You know, they returned the Big Ten's reigning running back of the year, and Mohamed Ibrahim. He averaged 153 yards a game last year, which ranked second nationally. They got a veteran quarterback in Tanner Morgan. He's starting his basically third full season in like 3.5 years now, basically. And then they're operating behind a veteran offensive line that's pretty deep. They'll be rotating, 6 or more players in there. So they got some good parts up front. Defense, they have a revamped defense a little bit here. They're deep along the line. They have a couple transfers in Val Pickney or Niles Pickney from Clemson and Val Martin from North Carolina State. So they should be doing a good job of rotating up front there. So they should be improved from last year. Last year they finished 3-4. A lot of COVID issues, just a lot of things just didn't go very well for them last year.
So, Randy, a question I had, can you give anyone an update on the status of Chris Ottman-Bell? Because I know that he had been battling injuries and kind of was classified as day-to-day. Has there been any change in the diagnosis as to whether he'll be able to play on Thursday night against Ohio State?
No, nothing new on there. Coach PJ Fleck had his media availability on Friday and listed Bell as day-to-day still. He said he's progressing well, but also said that whatever they do, they'll do with his health in mind. So yeah, we'll see. It was basically it appeared to be a high ankle sprain. It's been described. They haven't officially said what the exact injury is, but so yeah, it sounds like he's progressed well. Originally it was listed as week to week, but so we'll see.
Randy, the rush defense last year for Minnesota was, I guess to put it nicely, it struggled a little bit, ranked 102nd in the country. Ohio State's strength, obviously, is going to be its offensive line. They've got a good stable of running backs, and they're going to want to protect a freshman quarterback or a first-year starting quarterback.
Sure.
What do you foresee P.J. Fleck doing to try to stop that Ohio State run game?
Yeah, I think they'll be rotating linemen up front. I think that helps. They've revamped their linebacker core a little bit. They have a transfer from Abilene Christian, an FCS school, who this guy had started 3 years down there. Jack Gibbons. They're pretty high on him during the training camp. They returned a pretty good linebacker who started 2 years ago in Braylon Oliver. He blew out a knee in 2020 during spring drills. So, yeah, they hope to be better at those two spots. We'll see what happens come Thursday. I know that's, Ohio State has a big offensive line that can move some people. So it'll be a pretty big challenge for the Gophers.
So the question I had about Ibrahim, I know that you mentioned that he averaged, over 150 yards a game last season. For our listeners, for those who have not seen him, can you kind of give, I guess, like a comparison, or, because Minnesota traditionally has usually had a good running game, regardless of whether it's been PJ Fleck. I mean, going back through all the different coaching regimes.
Yeah.
Can you kind of where he rates in terms of, like a lot of, some really good running backs that have come through Minnesota?
Yeah, it's interesting with Mo. He's not the biggest guy, not the fastest guy, but he just finds a way. He's pretty tenacious. He runs very hard. He finds a way to basically find the open spaces, between blocks and everything. He's kind of not the tallest guy, so he can kind of hide behind the offensive line a little bit and pick his spots. It's I guess, it's not, I wouldn't say he does one thing just amazingly, but I think he does pretty much everything pretty well.
Randy, who do you think will pick up the slack in terms of Tanner Morgan's weapons? Who do you think is going to present the biggest challenges to an area of Ohio State's defense that really didn't perform well last year and will be featuring a lot of new faces this year?
For the Gophers on offense, if Chris Ottman-Bell plays, that would be a boost. If they're without him, it'll be more of a challenge. I think you're going to look at a guy like Daniel Jackson, who had a nice season as a freshman last year at wideout. They have a transfer from Texas A&M, Dalen Wright, who's been a relevant revelation in training camp. He hasn't had a whole lot of experience on the field yet, but I think he'll be somebody they look at. You might see them try to go to the tight ends a little bit more. Last year they only had 6 tight end catches for the whole season, so they have a 6'6" guy, Brevin Span Ford, who's shown a lot of potential, and he might be someone who becomes more involved in the offense this year.
So Randy, this is PJ Fleck's 5th year at Minnesota, and all the issues that that we know in terms of the COVID, the canceled games, all that kind of thing that happened last year to Minnesota as well as other teams in the Big Ten. The question I have is the fan base, from your perspective, are they still enthusiastic about PJ Fleck? I mean, he had a terrific year in 2019, and then they took a step back in 2020. So, I mean, how would you gauge kind of like the fans' perception of PJ Fleck as he goes into year 5?
I think people around here are cautiously optimistic, and that's showing up. Looks like the game is going to be as close to a sellout right now. Their season tickets are up a little bit too. I think people are optimistic now. That it's going to be a bit of a show me season too. I mean, last year didn't go quite the way as planned. I mean, I guess if you're going to have a mulligan, you might as well have it during a COVID season. I guess when everything else has gone haywire. No, I think people would like to see if they can match what they did 2 years ago or get close to that.
Yeah, I want to piggyback on that just a little bit and ask you and kind of get your thoughts on what you think most Minnesota fans would consider a successful season this year from PJ Fleck, and also to ask what kind of sort of, I guess, patience the administration will have, knowing that last year was basically a get-out-of-jail-free card for almost all coaches across the country. Not all of them, but a lot of them. Yeah. And what kind of leash PJ will have moving forward to get this Gophers team headed where they want it to be.
Well, I mean, he's in great standing with his athletic director Mark Coyle, who hired him. Basically, Coyle wants to keep him here long term. It's I mean, if things go wrong and they just put up a dud of a season, that's any coach. Their leash could be a little short, but I don't see that happening here whatsoever. As in, he's built up enough cred, especially with that 11-2 season in 2019. Something that they haven't had anything like that here in quite a while.
Mm-hmm. What did you think the expectations would be for most Minnesota fans this year?
I would say 8-9 wins. If things go well, 10. I mean, that'd have to go very well to get back to say a 10-2. But the schedule, aside from the opener here, is manageable through much of the season. Their non-conference games are Miami, Ohio, at Colorado, Bowling Green. Their first 5 Big Ten games, I would say they'll be favored or, slight underdogs in most of them, but, I'd say favored in probably at least 3 or 4 of those. They close a little tough stretch with road games at Indiana and Iowa, and then the home finale against Wisconsin. So, it would be in their best interest to get off to a good start and build that record up and, then see what they can do with those last 3.
So I know that, we've already discussed Mohamed Ibrahim, and Michael asked about Tanner Morgan and who are the likely targets. I guess the question I had is in relation to the arrival of a new offensive coordinator, Mike Sanford, and where do you anticipate the Minnesota offense, besides a heavy dose of Ibrahim early and often, kind of the idea of what do you think Mike Sanford, is he going to try and go back to what made Tanner Morgan so efficient in 2019? Are there things that he did at his previous coaching stops that he's going to try to implement at Minnesota? Do you think that he's go ahead?
Oh no, I was going to say, yeah, he was here last year. Basically, one of the things that hurt the offense a bit last year too was the fact that they had basically 2 spring practices before COVID hit and shut everything down, and then the limited training camp. So Mike Sanford came in there following Kirk Shiraka, which who had been pretty much the quarterback whisperer here with Tanner Morgan, and then so I think this year with a lot more time with not only Tanner Morgan but the rest of the team, I would expect the Gophers and Sanford to be basically be on the same page, where everything will be a lot more seamless. I would imagine.
Randy, before we let you go, just wanted to get your thoughts on where you think Thursday night's game will be won or lost. What matchups do you think will be the key ones, and if you have a final score prediction?
I think the key matchup for the Gophers, especially on defense, is that their secondary against those Ohio State wideouts. Olave and Garrett. That's a pretty tall order. Not just them. You got a pretty good tight end there too, and that's an area that they'll need to be playing pretty well in the secondary to hold those guys in check. I kind of see this as a game for them that the defense will need help from the offense. As in, if the Gophers can sustain some drives, shorten the game by keeping the ball. Then they have a chance to stay in it, and who knows what. It's not going to say that they're going to pull the upset, but I got them hanging around for Ohio State winning 30-23 is the number I've been using. There's Ohio State would seem to have many different ways they could win the game. The Gophers probably have 1 or 2 ways, and that's playing pretty flawlessly and hoping that they get a turnover or 2 and they can just keep the ball away from Ohio State.
Well, it will be interesting to see what happens Thursday. These guys haven't been playing in front of crowds for a while. It's an opener, and Minnesota will have a fired up crowd. So we thank you, Randy Johnson, Gophers and college football beat writer for the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, for being with us. Thanks for your time, and we look forward to seeing you and talking to you down the road.
Okay, sounds good, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Back, Chip, and I want to thank Randy Johnson, who was great. It was very nice of him to spend some time with us and tell us a little bit about the Gophers.
Yeah, I thought very appreciative of Randy's insights. Minnesota is obviously a long time Big Ten rival, but unfortunately, with the way scheduling goes nowadays, it's something that, Ohio State, they haven't played Minnesota, since 2018. So, to get an idea in terms of how Minnesota is looking this year, I'm very appreciative of Randy giving us his thoughts on what to look forward to when Ohio State and Minnesota play.
Mm-hmm. His score prediction was interesting to me because you and I have been, I think we're optimistic about Ohio State, but I think we're both cautious to say this is not a game where you and I expect to see Quinn Ewers get on the field, or even a third quarterback, and maybe not even a second. This might be a game where the starters are on for 4 quarters, because we think this could be a close game throughout, or at least a close enough game to where you're not sending out your second unit.
You got that right. I will be tremendously surprised if Ohio State is liberally substituting in players because they feel that they have the game well in hand. It's not that, and that is not meant as a shot at this year's team or at Ryan Day or what I anticipate from CJ Stroud, I think it's the type of thing where when you have an inexperienced quarterback going on the road for the first time, and the fact that, fans were not in the stands last year. I mean, I think that, that there's a possibility that the weather may not necessarily be, 100%, perfect. I mean, there's a slight chance of rain. And I just think that this game, I think Minnesota, they had a challenging year last year, but PJ Fleck, I think, is going to pull out all the stops, try and, have Minnesota competitive to the end. So I don't see any backups being in. I think, Ryan Day mentioned in his press conference earlier on Monday about, playing a lot of the, defensive linemen and wide receivers and that kind of thing. But I don't see, any of the backup quarterbacks coming in. I really think it's going to be a 4-quarter game that Ohio State, they'll take control in the fourth quarter and just be, I don't want to say, breathing, exhaling, like, oh, thank God that's over. I think it's going to be more of, okay, that's one under our belt, and now we have something to build upon for 2021.
Yeah, one thing about the Gophers is they'll play hard for all 4 quarters. They'll reflect their coach PJ Fleck the way that the way that Illinois reflected Bret Bielema. They're gonna give their all. They're gonna be difficult to deal with. They're gonna give you all you can handle. They're gonna make it a dogfight. They're gonna ugly up the game a little bit, and they're gonna try to see if they can hang around and get a break or two, and see if they can pull the upset. So that's something that's, the Ohio State fans are gonna have to get ready for a game that's, maybe Ohio State falls behind even early in this game, or maybe they have to come from behind and take a lead. Maybe they never get a big lead in this game, and by that I mean maybe they never lead by more than 10 points. But I think it'll be in the end an Ohio State victory. But they can't make a lot of mistakes in this game because there's not a big margin for error, I think, in a road game in a hostile environment, first time starting for CJ Stroud, and a young defense in terms of experience. So let's take a look a little bit at the game and the matchups. Let's look at the 2020 rankings first, Chip. The Minnesota defense was not good. The offense wasn't great either, but the defense was particularly problematic. They had the number 72 total defense, giving up 415 yards per game, and that's something certainly that Ohio State will be figuring they can get 500 yards, and against a team that gave up more than 400 yards a game last year. That'll be something they feel is realistic. The Minnesota defense gave up 30 points a game. They were number 69 nationally. That's not nice. And they were the number 36 pass defense at 208 yards a game. But maybe they had an inflated pass defense because their rush defense, Chip, 102nd in the country at 207 yards against per game.
And we were just talking about this being CJ Stroud's first game. I think the best way to ease CJ Stroud into a comfort level is, I'm not saying we're not going back to 2011 Ohio State where like throwing the ball was an adventure. I think Ryan Day knows his personnel very well. I think he has confidence in CJ Stroud to make the right decisions, but I also believe that, getting back to the personnel aspect, that offensive line, they would love nothing more than to be called upon to wear down that Minnesota defense. I'm sure Minnesota has tried to make strides to improving that run defense, but I really believe that's where this game is going to be won by Ohio State. And Ohio State, when we talk about in the fourth quarter, I think a heavy dose of the Ohio State running game, the offensive line wearing down the Minnesota defensive line. I think that's where you're going to see Ohio State just come out and pull this game out in the fourth quarter.
You know what I like about the Ohio State stable of running backs too is that with the number of backs they have that are talented and can carry the ball, that still sets up that fourth quarter where Master T can just be crushing guys who are already tired, like he did the year before last when he would just come in and rip off 8-9 yards a carry without even really getting touched because of that offensive line doing its job and wearing down the opponents. It's a good offensive line. We did hear today that that confirmation that Nicholas Petit-Frere says he expects he'll be playing left tackle on Thursday night, which kind of goes along with what we've been hearing out of the practice reports, and that this is a chance to get the 5 best offensive linemen on the field for Ohio State. And if that's the case, there's no reason to think that Ohio State won't go with a heavy dose of the run and try to keep C.J. Stroud comfortable and protected and pick their spots to go down the field.
And if Nicholas Petit-Frere is starting at left tackle, then more than likely that means that DeJuan Jones is starting at right tackle. And DeJuan Jones, you want to talk about, somebody who I can't imagine what it must be like lining up opposite of DeJuan Jones play after play, especially, we talked about it earlier in reference to the Nebraska-Illinois game, how frustrating and difficult that must be, lining up against a guy who is a legit, 330 at least, and is going to just, when they talk about forcing their will upon the opposition, being able to successfully run the ball play after play, I think we're going to see a lot of that in the fourth quarter.
It's like lining up opposite a woolly mammoth, I would imagine. Not something you want to see when you look across the line of scrimmage.
No, I wouldn't want to see that either.
Yeah. One of the good things about this Ohio State offense essentially running a 4-tackle offense, is that this will have given Ohio State's defensive line an opportunity in camp to go up against a line that's going to be more formidable than anything they see. And that's important in this game because Minnesota does have a very good offensive line. And so there won't be any surprises when Ohio State lines up against them because they've been battling DeJuan Jones and Thayer Munford and Nicholas Petit-Frere and on and on and on. And this is a defense that they will have had to pull out every stop that they have in practice. So they're going to be ready to go to that bag of tricks in the game.
And Ryan Day did mention that defensive line will rotate, so we should see the debut of Jack Sawyer. I mean, it's not something that I wouldn't necessarily say like by this play of the first or second quarter, but I think we're going to see a healthy rotation of defensive linemen because, as you said, the Minnesota offensive line is pretty solid, and as you also said that going up against the Ohio State offensive line throughout the preseason, these guys are going to be well conditioned and prepared for that.
Yeah. Let's take a look at the offense for Minnesota. The ranking wasn't much higher on offense. Number 69 total offense in the country, 391 yards per game. I think that was 4th in the Big Ten, if I recall correctly. Scoring offense, 27 points a game, 71st in the country. Rushing offense was better, 42nd in the country. Ibrahim and that offensive line doing a lot of that work, 191 yards per game. Pass offense was not good last year, 92nd in the country, 199 yards per game. But as we talked about with Randy Johnson, Tanner Morgan is an experienced quarterback. He's got some weapons, maybe not the weapons that he had a year or two ago. They struggled in the passing game a bit last year, but there's no reason to think that he can't get back and rebound and be back to where he was 2 years ago.
The biggest question I would have for the Minnesota passing game, quite frankly, is, you want to see Tanner Morgan return to his 2019 form, but if, by and large, it's like the wide receivers, losing a first-round talent like Rashad Bateman is not easily replaced. And as you said, it wasn't as though that they were lighting it up last year with Rashad Bateman. So it's going to be interesting to see how much maturation the Minnesota passing game has taken in year 2 under Mike Sanford's direction.
Yeah. Now they will have more experience starting players, like by and large, than Ohio State in a lot of positions. You mentioned Ottman Bell. If he plays, that's a weapon for Minnesota and for Tanner Morgan. And we heard from Randy Johnson that Daniel Jackson is a guy that they expect may step up as a weapon this year as well. So the other thing about Tanner Morgan is that he's going to be picking on position group for Ohio State that a lot of Buckeye fans don't have a lot of confidence in at this point. We'll see how that team feeds the confidence or erodes what little confidence there is as we go through the season. But the corners and the safeties have not been, you and I talked about them as our areas of concern in our show a couple weeks ago. So it's going to be down to, can Ohio State get a pass rush? I think that Ohio State's got the defensive ends and the defensive tackles to mount a pass rush. They can add blitzing linebackers when they need to, and that's a pretty good Minnesota offensive line. But I still think that if you're going to make explosive plays in the passing game, you're going to need to hold the ball 4 or 5 seconds, and that's going to let guys like Zach Harrison, pin their ears back, so to speak, and get in there and make plays.
And we're going to, as you said, we're going to see if our confidence in the corners and safeties is justified. And by that, 7 Banks returns. This should be Cameron Brown's return to action. We'll see, obviously, a lot of players being rotated in and out, but we'll see if the improvement has taken root within that secondary. I think you raised an interesting point that last year, I think a big part of the problem for Ohio State in the secondary was the pass rush was primarily from the interior, like Tommy Togiai and Haskell Garrett last year. It was primarily from the inside. See if there's been improvement from Zach Harrison, Tyreek Smith, Javonte Jean-Baptiste on the perimeter to see if they can apply pressure to help that secondary gain some confidence in the early going.
And these young guys coming in can only have lit a fire under those guys, because if they don't perform, these younger guys are going to get their opportunity to come in and play early. So we will see how the pass rush goes. But I feel pretty good about Larry Johnson and what he's usually able to do with that group. So I expect a little bit of a bounce back year this year. You got a little bit different body types on the edge. Jonathan Cooper he'd have his moments, but he was a guy who would just generally get pressures rather than sacks. He wasn't one of those. He wasn't it's not fair to even suggest it, but he wasn't a Bosa. He wasn't a Chase Young type. Those are ludicrous players that don't come around every year, although for a few years at Ohio State they did anyway. We'll have to see if any of these young guys can morph into that. But Jonathan Cooper wasn't that type of player.
No, he wasn't. But again, I think you were accurate when you say it's like you have to look at the player for who they are, not for what you want them to be. Mm-hmm. I mean, everyone wants a Nick Bosa or a Joey Bosa or a Chase Young. I think the Ohio State defensive ends this year are good. We'll see how good they are starting Thursday night.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. The first game is always, a lot of years the first game is a team that Ohio State's going to just show up and pummel them. This year, that's not the way the schedule unfolded. This year, it was we're going to put a decent, Western Division team on the road as the first game. Then they're going to have Oregon. So you're really not going to get that cupcake to start the schedule for Ohio State for a couple of games. So we'll see how that goes. I'm looking forward to it. I'm pumped up. Of course, you and I will come back next week and we'll talk about it and we'll dissect the game a little bit and look ahead to Oregon. But before we get out of here today, Chip, we need to talk about our picks to click and our score predictions. So I'm going to let you go first on offense this time. Who's your pick to click on offense for the Minnesota game?
Well, I mentioned earlier, I really believe that the running game is going to be a significant portion of the game plan, helping CJ Stroud. And I have no idea if this is just camp hyperbole, but I'm going to go with Mayan Williams. I think Mayan Williams at the running back position, I'm not sure if he's necessarily going to start, but I think he will definitely play. I think he will have some moments that we saw glimpses of against Clemson in the Sugar Bowl on January 1st. So Mayan Williams is my pick to click.
All right, I am going to go with, even though I expect a heavy dose of the run, I'm going to say C.J. Stroud is my pick to click because I'm anticipating an efficient, something like a 14 of 19 passing game from him, and I expect him to make 2 chunk plays with his legs. I think his running ability, I think, is an underrated facet of his game. We saw a glimpse of that last year. So I'm going to say C.J. Stroud is my pick to click on offense. Let us turn it. Yeah, cool. We'll see. We'll see next week if either of us are right or if we're both wrong. And let's turn our attention to the defense. I'm going to go first on defense since you went first on offense. And I'm going to go a little bit into the depth and into that rotation, I think. I'm going to say Javonte Jean-Baptiste is my pick to click. I don't know why. It's just a gut feeling.
Sometimes those are, when you can't really put your finger on it, sometimes those are the best decisions. So
yeah, I think it was Zach Harrison said this week that he was one of the most improved players on the defense from last year to this year. So I'm gonna take him at his word, and I'm gonna say, let's see what he's got in the first game.
I like it.
All right, who you got on defense, Chip?
All right. So we were talking earlier with Randy and about Mohamed Ibrahim. I think it's going to be a lot of the running game is going to be where Minnesota is going to either succeed or fail. And that being the case, I'm looking for Haskell Garrett to help clog up the interior and make things a little bit more difficult for Ibrahim than he would prefer.
All right, that's a good pick. I like it. As soon as you talked about Ibrahim, that's where I figured you were going. So there you go. So we have our offensive and defensive picks to click. Now we have nothing left to do except our score predictions. I have my score prediction ready. Would you like to go first or second?
I'll go second.
All right. I am taking a little bit of a page out of Randy Johnson's book in terms of I'm thinking along the same type of lines. I'm going with Ohio State 35, Minnesota 27.
I like it. I think we're going to be of 3 similar mindsets. I think I've said it all along this podcast that I think this is the kind of game Ohio State in the fourth quarter. I'm going to go Ohio State 37, Minnesota 20. And I think this game is going to feel somewhat similar to 4 years ago when, ironically, Ohio State also opened up on the road at Indiana, where it was kind of sluggish. And then in the fourth quarter, they started to turn it on. So that's why I'm saying I think the running game and Ohio State pulls, wins it. I'm going to go 37-20.
All right, so you've got a 17-point Ohio State win right out of the gate. You're going bigger than I thought you would. But hey,
well, yeah,
that's okay.
I like I said, I think it's the. We talked about it. I think it's that Ohio State running game. You mentioned accurately that Minnesota run defense. I think it's controlling the clock. We might see the legend of Travion Henderson emerge Thursday night. We keep hearing about how dynamic. I'm just saying, it's like I could see. You and I both can remember a certain superstar running back who also wore number 32 at the time, coming in late in the game. as a true freshman, guy by the name of Robert Smith. Like kind of providing a spark. Not that I think Ohio State's going to need a spark, but I think he's going to be just part of that, that three-headed monster running game. I think Mayan Williams, you mentioned Master Teague earlier. I think Travion Henderson might have a play or two. But that's why I just think the running game is going to be enough to make it conclusively for Ohio State. That's why I came up with my score prediction.
Interesting that you invoked the name of a Buckeye who then went on to play in Minnesota.
Well, I didn't think of it until you just mentioned it now, but I know you can remember when Robert Smith, when he came off the bench, like in, late in the game and he was needed. Completely different style of Ohio State team back then. But he wore number 32 and was obviously the crown jewel of that 1990 recruiting class. But yeah, I think the Ohio State running game is going to be the difference in this one.
Look at you talking about recruiting on the on the Silver Bullets podcast.
Well, you know full well Robert Smith. That was like the people were so excited about Robert Smith, and then we all know how things kind of started to turn. I don't want to say for the worse, but certainly turn differently than I think anyone certainly could have anticipated. But that's a story for another time.
Yeah, it was. I've actually had that conversation with Robert Smith, so it's a great. It was great to get his perspective on it, and the great thing about Robert Smith is he once appeared on Mystery Science Theater 3000.
There you go. Now, right then and there, that's worthy of a discussion right there for a podcast.
Yeah. And that show was also filmed in Minneapolis, so. There you go. All right, so we'll come back. Yeah. Best Brains was based in Minnesota. So, we're going to come back next week, Chip, and we will talk about the Ohio State Buckeyes at the Minnesota Golden Gophers. We'll look back at our score predictions and see who came the closest. We'll check on our picks to click. Obviously, we'll look ahead to the Oregon Ducks, and we're in the season, man. This is unbelievable. And this is even the best kind of opening week for us because we get to watch the Buckeyes, and then on Saturday we get to watch everybody else, knowing that the team we watch has already played.
And as you said, I mean, we get to enjoy Saturday, and there are some great games. I mean, regardless of. Like you said, we love Ohio State. We follow Ohio State, but there are some. I mean, starting, when it comes to at noon, at 3:30, the night games. I mean, there are some really good football games. So it's certainly going to be one of those days where it's like I'm going to be very unproductive except when I'm watching college football.
Yeah. So we've of course got some games, some other games this week. When Ohio State obviously plays in Minnesota on Thursday, but not the only Big Ten school in action. Rutgers will be hosting Temple on Thursday, so there'll be multiple Big Ten schools in action on Thursday. Then on Friday, Michigan State plays at Northwestern. Like you mentioned, Saturday there's some killer games. That Penn State at Wisconsin game is a huge one to keep an eye on. Of course, Nebraska fans are going to hope their team can bounce back against Fordham, and you would think that they will. Maryland playing West Virginia, that's going to be an interesting matchup. Anything else that you got your eye on for this weekend?
Well, I'm not anticipating a loss. But I think it does bear notice that I think that Phil Steele, he rated Western Michigan ahead of the University of Michigan. So I think the Wolverines are going to win, but kind of along the lines of, we talked earlier about Nebraska, Illinois. I think if the Wolverines, if they struggle in any way, shape, or form against Western Michigan, I think that is going to be something to keep an eye on as we progress through the 2021 season.
It's a sleepy noon kickoff, Chip. And do we know the point spread of that game?
I do not.
Right.
I will say that I haven't. I know that you were talking earlier about some of the other Big Ten games. One of which I do know the point spread. The Indiana Iowa game at 3:30 on the Big Ten Network. Iowa's favored by 3.5. So basically, almost like a pick 'em. That should be like I said. That's going to be one of those games that I'm going to be watching Penn State, Wisconsin, flipping back and forth between Michigan and Western Michigan at noon, and then devoting Indiana, Iowa for 3:30.
If you want to get an early scouting report on Oregon, they play at 2:00 Eastern time against Fresno State at home. So that's a game that you're going to need the Pac-12 network. Does anybody have the Pac-12 network?
Okay, if anyone out there has the Pac-12 network, please let Michael and I know, because I think you're on that endangered species list.
Yeah. Some interesting games though. Week 1, like you mentioned, Alabama and Miami. Is the U back? Probably not.
Probably not.
Probably not. And of course, the Georgia Clemson game is a big game.
And I'm gonna say that I think this might. I'm gonna say that this might be where Georgia takes a step forward and Clemson takes a step back. I'm not saying that they're gonna blow out Clemson by any stretch, but I think Georgia can win this one and kind of stamp themselves as a possible college football playoff contender in this game.
I believe that's a stupid neutral site game. Burt tries to go 2-0 against Texas San Antonio at home. I think, is that it for the big? No,
you got Purdue and Oregon State.
Yeah. Okay, Purdue and Oregon State, and of course, we have a Sunday game, Chip. Notre Dame at Florida State.
Right, and this should be interesting simply because Florida State obviously is. I mean, they're rebuilding, but Notre Dame, coming off, they have Jack Cohn, formerly of Wisconsin, was named Notre Dame's starting quarterback. So we'll see what shape Notre Dame is in going into 2021 on Sunday night.
They are number 9 to start the season. LSU at UCLA is an 8:30 game on Fox, as you mentioned that one earlier today in the broadcast here. Bad news for me: Portland State at Hawaii not showing a TV, not showing a TV network for national TV. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to find that one, but I'll certainly look because that starts at midnight.
I have no doubt that you will certainly look. How's that?
We even have a Monday game. Louisville is playing Ole Miss on Monday, so that's in Georgia for reasons. I don't know what those reasons are, but anyway, that's what we got this weekend. College football is back, Chip. We're going to come back and talk about it next week. Anything else we need to discuss before we get on out of here?
No, just enjoy the weekend and embrace college football because, as you and I have said many times, it will be gone before you know it. So embrace all these games, even the Portland State Hawaii game, if you can find it.
Yes, definitely. All right, Chip, where can folks find you on the interwebs?
I can be found on Twitter at Chip Minnich. Last name is spelled Minnich. And besides this podcast, I'm also a contributor to Athlon Sports, where you may find periodic articles about Ohio State as well as other college football teams that I'm asked to write about.
Oh, I like it. You're very cryptic there. You may find them. You may not. I don't know. You're either being cryptic or they're just really hard to find on the Athlon.
Well, it depends. It really depends on our listeners in terms of how varied their interests are. Because I sometimes am asked, the reason why I was talking about the Iowa-Indiana game, for example. I was asked to write about that one. Okay. So sometimes I'm asked to write about different teams beyond Ohio State. It just really depends on, like I said, not everyone really, follows these other programs.
Yeah. All right. You can find me on Twitter as well, at Mike36Fan. You can follow me there. You can also catch my work at BuckeyeScoop.com as the Grumpy Old Buckeye. I have confirmed that, yes, Buckeye Scoop would like me to be the Grumpy Old Buckeye for another season, so I am back. You will find my column on Friday at some point. I don't even know what time. I should probably ask Gerd about that. Sometime Friday, my Grumpy Old Buckeye column will drop, and you can read all the things that made me grumpy about the Buckeyes during the game. It's often tongue in cheek, but sometimes it's actually, I actually do get frustrated sometimes and irritated, and I let you know. I let you know what's bugging me, what's stuck in my craw, as it were. So that will do it for this episode of the Silver Bullets podcast. Thanks again to our special guest this week, Randy Johnson. Not the guy who used to pitch, but in the major leagues, but a very good Randy Johnson in his own right, the Minnesota Golden Gophers and college football beat writer for the Minneapolis Star-Tribune. Thank you so much, Randy, for being with us this week. We'll also try to line up a guest to tell us about Oregon next week. And the only thing left for us to do, Chip, is the thing we do at the end. Go Bucks!
Go Bucks!